Colin Fleming is EVP Worldwide Marketing at Salesforce, where he leads a 600-plus person global marketing team responsible for brand, events, campaigns and advertising, content, creative, and so much more. And in addition to his many award-winning accolades, Colin and his team are responsible for launching Salesforce Plus, a streaming service that includes both live experiences, original series, podcasts, and some other programming as well. I think about Salesforce Plus as the initial shot that started the owned media revolution, and so I'm so excited to talk to him today. So please welcome to the stage, Colin Fleming. So thank you so much for being here.
We got
A little hot mic.
everybody else got Beastie Boys.
I know, that was
the walk-up music. I don't know, I feel a little left out.
Well, we can do a quick edit for a walk-off
Nice.
song. How's that work?
Sounds good.
But on that note, what I love hearing about is marketer origin stories. And for folks who don't have a traditional marketing background, kind of how they got into the practice. And I believe, Colin, you're a race car driver for Red Bull Racing.
Yeah, it's a natural career progression for...
So can you talk a little bit more about that and just how that experience kind of shaped you into the marketer?
Yeah, happy to. Age of 8 years old, I turned on a Formula One race in Monaco, I believe it was, and I was just hooked. Absolutely hooked. So I was born and raised in California. There's not a whole lot of Formula One racing happening in California. So long story short, ended up moving to Europe at a very young age, 13 years old. Started racing go-karts professionally, which was a crazy, crazy leap. And it turns out that racing is a very expensive sport. And I ended up spending more time with CMOs at 13, 15, 17 than I did driving race cars. And So I learned very quickly what mattered and, more importantly, what didn't matter to CMOs. And so, raised almost $40 million in personal sponsorship. Was a test driver for Red Bull Formula One team, raced in Formula 3 and Formula 2. Had an unbelievable run, got right on the cusp of Formula One. And this kid called Sebastian Vettel came along and...
I've heard of him.
Punk. They ended up picking him over me, you know what? You can't argue. They did a damn good job. He went on to win 4 world championships, and I turned to Salesforce as a natural transition, as you do. I decided to take all of the lessons I had learned, raising money, figuring out what CMOs cared about, and turn it into what's been a pretty fun ride in 13 years at Salesforce. So it's been a really fun journey.
That's awesome. And so, the road led you to Salesforce, SVP of Worldwide Marketing. And you just celebrated 25 years, I think, since the founding of Salesforce, which is obviously an iconic and generational brand. Now, one of the big initiatives at Salesforce that you were responsible for was Salesforce Plus.
Yeah.
So take us back to those internal meetings before Salesforce Plus came about. What were some of the trends that you were seeing that kind of led to it?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it in your presentation earlier. 2020, I've got 2 young kids. During the pandemic, my son was 1 and my daughter was 4. I'd spend every morning, like we all did, on my Peloton bike. I dialed into Zoom for 8 hours, 10 hours a day, and then I turned on Netflix, maybe drink a little alcohol at the same time.
Not on the Peloton.
Not on the Peloton. Sometimes. And we would try to figure out stuff that was interesting to watch on Netflix, and I was like, what was really interesting is, we quickly burned through all of the sitcoms and all the content that wasn't being produced at that point. And one of the things that sort of became obvious to me was there's not a lot of business content on here. There's nothing that really is inspiring that I can truly learn from or how to deal with this unprecedented situation we found ourselves in. And so we kind of went to work the next day and asked ourselves, what would happen if the community development of Peloton and the incredible on-demand part of Peloton met the Netflix side, and what would that look like in business? And literally, we call it Peloflixforce. Initially, it was like the code name, Peloflixforce.
Oh, how funny.
And started to build it.
Wow.
Did not ask for permission, just went and built it. And there's many people that said it couldn't be done, many people that said it was a bad idea. I may have been some of those people at some point. And we built something we found a little success with and we're really happy about. I think one of the things that we built it 2.5 months. It was duct tape and chewing gum, as most things are at launch. And we were talking the other day, when we launched it, it broke within the first 3 weeks. And we took a page out of Disney Plus, actually. So Salesforce was founded on this whole idea of that it should be as easy to use as is to buy a book on Amazon, very consumer oriented. And so we turned to the consumer world for inspiration. And what we took a lot of inspiration from was, remember when we launched Disney Plus, they launched with Hamilton as like the main launch thing. Yeah. And so we picked Dreamforce. Dreamforce is our user, it's our Goldenhour. It's slightly larger than this one. For now. Dreamforce is a couple 100,000 person software conference in San Francisco, the largest technology conference in the world. And we used that as our launch moment. And built an audience, felt really good. It then broke. We had no pipeline for the first year because it broke the authentication broke during Dreamforce. Yeah. And so we had an uphill battle for it, but it was a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun on the run.
Just to double click on it, you were talking in the prep about just the connection to events and just the level of global scale that introduced. Can you just say a couple words about that?
Yeah, it's been said that Salesforce is an events company that might just sell software on the side. We do 500 plus events per year. It is a huge part of my life. It's what I think about all day long. And so it might be the first piece of advice I would give to this team is just think about what is your company's special area of focus and expertise. For Salesforce, it's events. For some of you, it may be something else, maybe demand gen or content orientation or whatever it may be. And so we just picked the natural place to kind of hook it to, if you will. There was already built-in momentum. There's a built-in brand, and it made for an easy transition for us.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And you did mention there was no buy-in internal. There was no approval process. There was no committee. This happened in your mind, or as you guys were just as it launched or coming off of the launch, was there a connection to kind of the revenue pipeline side of it as sort of the true north for this from the beginning, or was brand, kind of the driver?
You mentioned Salesforce is 25 years old, which I guess makes this a adult company, let's say. I'm not going to go old, but an adult company. And, we suffer from the same thing you articulated in your presentation earlier. It's we've got forms in front of content for days. All of our leads go to an SDR to be followed up until they get nurtured to the point where they get to a BDR, an account executive, and 3 months later, things get into play. That happens. It's a real thing at a large, $100, $200 billion company. And we saw a small window of opportunity to kind of break that. There was a little moment during the pandemic where we couldn't rely on that anymore. Yeah. Events had shut down, and we're like, now's the time. Now's the time. You mentioned there's a new playbook. Why don't we write the new playbook? And so I didn't tell my CMO. We just went and built Salesforce Plus, and I showed her the prototype about 2 weeks before launch, and she's like, "Go! This is awesome. You can't shut it down anyway, so just go." And it was a lot of fun. So I joke, I hopefully built a little bit of momentum along the way, but we talk about the playbook. There's a lot of playbooks that live and then die very quickly. I thought that might be the case, but we thought we'd give it the old college try, and we built something really special. It did $600 million in pipeline last year. So the playbook's got some future, folks. And so we're really excited about what we've been able to do with it. And now we've pivoted, we've grown, we've learned, and I'll share some of those lessons as well. But the playbook has got some promise, and so we're going to keep building it.
Well, let's talk about the learnings, because I think what's pretty cool is for most of us in this room, we're on step 1 or 2, and you have 2.5 years of having this out into the world and 2.5 years of learnings. And curious kind of what, if there's anything you would be willing to share on kind of what you guys are learning so far, 2.5 years in.
It's been really funny. The hook to events has been really powerful for us because you mentioned it's this gold mine of incredible content. And there was a natural built-in audience for us. And one of the best things that Salesforce has done, which I can see you doing with Goldenhour, is using events as a forcing function for not just the content or not just the marketing organization, but for the company at large. Yeah. So at Salesforce, all of our product development, our sales functions, all of our marketing organization revolves around Dreamforce. Everything. I can get anything done in the company if I just say the word Dreamforce. And so that's really interesting. So we use events as a really strong kind of wedge into it as well. But that's a moment in time. We want we want to build a subscriber base that we can nurture and keep coming back. And so we've dabbled with original series and original programming. We've won almost 100 awards from that original program we've put together. So I'm really proud of the studios team that we've developed. And we hired people from outside of enterprise software. I hired a producer from the David Axelrod podcast from ABC News. We just went out and just did the consumer world analogy. And so really thinking about what types of content really resonates. We've seen a really interesting learning and attention spans. I mean, it was short before, but it's like crazy now. The average piece of content we have on Salesforce Plus is 6.5 minutes. Wow. Think about our events, 30 minutes scheduled by 30 minutes, maybe an hour-long session, 6 minutes. Wow. And that's for the original programming, but here's the interesting learning. You're like, okay, now everything's got to be shorter. But what we've learned is long form really works too.
Interesting.
The average watch time during Dreamforce, I had to check this 3 times because it didn't make sense to me, 154 minutes of average watch time on Salesforce Plus during Dreamforce. So it just shows that when you put rigor and intent on high quality content, people will hang on. That's why we all binge on shows on Netflix or whatever. So those consumer world analogies do hold true. And this is where one of the things that we've learned a lot is there is literally no separation between B2B and B2C. The humans, it's business to human, isn't it? And that same person that's buying or filling out that RFP is the same person buying all these Nikes you all seem to be walking around in. And I think those consumers exhibit the same behavior as business decision makers. And so why not produce content that resonates for both of them?
I totally agree. And so awesome to hear you kind of help validate that. I'm curious where you're going with it, like where you're headed, like what's a peek into the future kind of for Salesforce Plus?
We're continuing to experiment, learn lessons. Some of the original programming has worked and we're really proud of it. Some of it hasn't. And so we try to operate in a very much like a pilot-like scenario. We call it tactics dictate strategy at Salesforce, but you see it in Hollywood or just pilots. And we'll produce something, and if it's got promise, we'll double down and build it. And if it fails, we just move on. Yeah. And that's really hard for all of us. And as a career marketer myself, you get emotionally attached to something. You're like, oh, I got to do this thing. Yeah. Because I started it. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. If it's not working, move on and do something else. Yeah. And I think that that's something that we've tried to exhibit. It's kind of just fail fast type of mentality. We've seen a huge growth in our international audience with Salesforce Plus, so the owned media environment. We mentioned Dreamforce before. We've a couple 100,000 people register for Dreamforce. Before the pandemic, we'll get roughly 20 countries represented, which we're really proud of. Right. This is a global event. It's amazing. Last year, we had 154 countries represented watching Dreamforce. And so you just start to see the unprecedented global reach that you can really, when you reduce the friction and you make it so that people don't have to hop on planes or find the big expense to travel to San Francisco or wherever your event may be, that's fascinating. And so we've learned a lot around flattening the world, really learned a lot around duration of content. And we've also doing a lot more virtual events. So today we're launching a big virtual event. We've got almost 20,000 people registered for a truly virtual event, launching our Data Cloud product. And so we'll continue to do little things like that. And it's better than a webinar, not quite a produced event like this. And we're finding a lot of efficiencies in that for sure.
That's awesome. One thing I'm thinking is for the folks on the AV team, if we had a mic that we can pass around, would love to maybe see if the audience has any questions as well for Colin. But Colin, one of the things to ask, we didn't rehearse this, sales. Like, how does the sales team, how do you work with sales?
Yeah. When you work at a company called Salesforce, it's pretty important. We have 15,000 account executives.
Jeez.
A lot of mouths to feed. And so, of course, we could not have launched a product like this or a platform like this without thinking about sales. Yeah. And so one of the more interesting things we do that you and I were talking about is, of course, we host Dreamforce, and it's a huge ROI driver for us. We spend a lot of money on it, but we retrieve a lot of money back in terms of pipeline and interest for sure, we find a lot of intent data on our platform as well. Right. And if somebody's watching a piece of original programming or a specific session at Dreamforce, we send a Slack message to the AE like, hey, your account or your lead is on watching this Data Cloud broadcast or attending this event. right in their Slack profile. And oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the kind of behavior that drives. And so just little things like that. If you're on the pricing page, boom, you get a Slack message. Somebody's watching a series on Salesforce Plus, boom, Slack message. And so there's trying to provide signal to the noise, but just one little piece of intent. They get a monthly summary that talks about where their accounts are at on the platform, what they seem to be interested in, and there's a lot of interest that, intent data that gets surfaced as part of that as well.
That's so powerful, and I think that's a big part of the missing link that we've seen historically, just publishing everything to like a YouTube channel or something of the like. So powerful to see how you're activating the first party data.
Too much of this is a word of caution, if I can. I think a lot of people that don't really understand the 95-5 rule or don't understand the sort of content marketing push is like, okay, we produce all this content at this event, just put it on the YouTube graveyard to die, and we'll move on with our day. And like, that's not a strategy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Don't do it. And so that's something that you've got to build content specific or channel specific content. Like, we take all of our Dreamforce content, only a few % of it goes on YouTube because it's not built for the platform. We take the time and effort to customize it, sometimes recapture it and put it in the language of YouTube, if you will, because it performs a lot better.
Do any folks have any questions? We have some folks with the mics. Yeah, great. Where are we at? Where's the mic? Oh, I'm going to start here in the front.
What was the team composition when you first started Salesforce Plus, and then how did it evolve to today?
The team composition was, I tapped people on the shoulder as I walked around. Actually, I wasn't walking around the office. I just Slack messaged people. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? No, pretty small. We didn't hire anybody to do Salesforce Plus. We had already had a little bit of an event technology team in play, and we just started with a vision. And I think that's one thing that I've learned is we didn't have the resources. We didn't have the team in place. I just sent a little video out to the team, and I said, I want to do this. And brought some people, we want to do something really different. And when you put together an inspiring vision, people just ran towards it. I was having to tell people to back off because it was something new and something exciting. And so I'm very fortunate to have a large organization, Salesforce. That might not be always the case, but it always starts with having a crystal clear vision. And I think you'll drive people to go nights and weekends and above and beyond when that vision is there. But in terms of the team dynamic, we did hire from some consumer world environments, ABC News, podcast environments, CBS, ESPN. That helped a lot. We hired some consumer world UI leads as well, because enterprise software does some things well. User interfaces and consumer technology is not one of them generally. And so we hired from outside the industry a little bit to be able to do some interesting things. And we just failed fast, and we learned, and we put it in a small platform, build it to be something powerful. And we continue to develop it. And now it's been amazing to see companies that are sort of following suit with their own passion. And one of the things that I'm anxious about now is we haven't done fast enough beyond video as well. Like, we've done the video thing, I think, decently well, but the opportunity to do longer form content, different types of content is really the future. So we're kind of heading in that direction now.
I see Nolan over here. Mike. Oh, hi.
Hey, so you talked a lot about eyeballs and how tricky it is to hold on to them and stuff. And as we develop this language of not just B2C type dialoguing with each other through video, what's going on in your head? What are you watching?
Oh, I have the attention span of an ant.
TikTok brand.
Of TikTok group, yeah. When I feel like I'm getting sufficient value from something, I will absolutely spend the time. I'm really inspired by LinkedIn, actually. It's been amazing. Outside of our world, people kind of turn their nose up at LinkedIn. Like, especially my leadership, they're like, what are you talking about? It's people with khaki pants on LinkedIn all day long. Apologies for anybody who has khaki pants on today. But there's incredible value of creators in this room and beyond that are just doing really inspiring stuff. And so I get really inspired by consumer world brands. I don't turn to my competitors. I don't care about what Microsoft is doing. I don't care about what Oracle or SAP is doing. I really don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I want to know what you as consumers are doing and where you're spending your time, what inspires you. And if I could provide a little bit of value to you, you're going to join me in that 95% of audience that will eventually at some point will want to buy some CRM. And I think that it's about providing value. It's not about putting a form complete in front of work. That does have to happen occasionally. But provide value, and the rest kind of takes care of itself.
One in the aisle there?
I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you only produce shows yourself, or have you also considered acquiring shows of creators that are already putting a show out there and just basically paying them to acquire the concept and then have content be created for you?
Yeah, we do a little bit of both. We produce our own content, but we've also done quite a bit of partnering. We did a series with Fortune called Ecopreneurs that won Content Marketing Program of the Year this last 2 years, actually. We did with the Pivot podcast and the Vox Network with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. Lots of fun there. Scott's an HR nightmare, but he's really talented and powerful. So I think we do a little bit of both. It just depends where the subject matter expertise. If we feel like we have sufficient knowledge to provide that value I was talking about before, we'll produce it internally because I think there's some cost efficiencies there occasionally. But if we think that the expertise is elsewhere, we'll do it there as well.
One quick question, Colin, too. Recalled from our prep that we were talking about this idea of identity as well as a function of owned media, because we so often think about the content itself as, which is of course a key driver of that engagement, but solving the problem of identifying these real humans who are engaging with the content, whose relationship may one day end at their current employer, and but we still want to continue to keep them sort of within our broader audience. Can you speak even philosophically just to this idea of identity and just kind of how you think about the importance of it? Yeah,
identity is everything, and for too long we've put form completes in replace for identity. It's two very different concepts, right? Form complete is there to generate a lead, so the sales can call down. Identity is to start to build a relationship. Yeah. And one of the things that's really interesting is we've lost a lot of really great interaction with people because, frankly, we just focused on form completes. And so what we started to do is really think about, okay, how do we start to build a relationship with you as an audience? And we started with, okay, we'll just take our product identity, whatever you use to log in, but guess what happens should Anthony leave Gainsight and come to create Audience Plus? Gone. And so we started to think about what does an identity look like to create that maybe persists. And so we've created this platform called Trailblazer ID that allows us to track with humans, no matter where their career takes them or whatever happens. And I understand that when Anthony or somebody else changes a job, that might be a really great opportunity to surface them interesting content, or about how to onboard, what's your first 90 days look like, what is the skills you might need to take to your new career. Those things are really fascinating. And so identity is a pain in the ass, and it's really challenging. But if you've been on any retail site in the last 20 years, what happens right when you log in? Give us your email address and we'll give you 20% off, right? Right. They're trying to build a subscriber base. That's important for us in B2B too, and so we've got to focus there.
Amazing. Well, look, we have time for one final question here. I was sort of reflecting on in the opening, it's been a trying few years for us just broadly as a practice. I'm curious if, what you would say to somebody in the room today that might be a content marketer or a demand marketer carrying a pipeline target, a CMO, who's watching this and is sort of encouraged by the future of marketing. They actually feel like there's something here. Like, what would you say to them just about, the role of the marketer moving forward in this new world?
I love what you said earlier, and I'll just sort of reiterate it. It's just like, break the playbook. We have to move on from the 25-year-old playbook. We have to. And there's all kinds of red tape in our way, but we got to find ways to move on. And I think we got to speak the language of the business and understand it's not just like, oh, we're going to remove all forms from everything we do and everything's going to work out. That doesn't work that way. Companies have to generate revenue. We have to connect what we do to revenue, but it doesn't always have to be in front of a form complete. Right. So I think that we just have to break the mold a little bit, I think, number one. Number two is the thing that I'm really passionate about, and I've been on a bit of a rampage on this one the last couple of years, which is stop apologizing for being a B2B marketer. For some reason, in our heads, we've built it up. I assume most of you are in B2B, but I think it applies to B2C as well, that for some reason B2B has accepted that we can operate at a lower bar than B2C, like that's okay. Why? Why is that okay? We drive more of the economy than B2C does. So why not play there? And so I think it's really inspiring for me to just think about there's a whole new generation of B2B marketers that are going to start to think like that and start to really challenge the world in terms of really set this new status quo for what B2C or B2B excellence can look like. And so I really get inspired by what's ahead of us and what we can all do together. And I think events like this and communities like what we've built are really powerful. And so challenge the status quo, go build something really special.
All right, well, let's give it up for Colin Fleming. Thank you so much, Colin.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.